With new knife super steels hitting the market every couple of years, the cost of knives that use these high-tech new age metals have begun to drop and normalize from the previously accepted high price tags. So what exactly is the best super steel for your money? Do you have to sacrifice on things like a competent heat treat to save your wallet? Or is there a super steel that has been around for over 33 years that can be had on knives under $100? This is Steel Snobs, and today we talk Elmax Super Clean. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and today, backed by popular demand, is another episode of Steel Snobs, the series where I attempt to crack the shell of mystery behind knife steel metallurgy using terms that are easy to understand. And today we are talking about Böhler Elmax Super Clean, a veritable European stainless super steel that has been around since 1990, utilizing third-generation powder metallurgy. How good are the individual properties for Elmax? How does that translate to use in the real world? Is it a steel that ultimately makes the most sense for the largest amount of people? Let's find out. Elmax Super Clean, or more easily said Elmax, was developed and patented by Böhler Uddeholm in 1990 specifically for use in the high-tech electronics industry. Think circuits, connectors, and switches. However, based on its highly practical properties of being stainless, tough, and wear resistant, it naturally found its way into the cutlery industry, both in domestic and in industrial cutting capacities. For knife enthusiasts, it may be easy to assume that all these steels were made specifically for knives from the start, when in reality, a majority of them were made for some other purposes in mind. That said, today we will only be referencing Elmax for the purpose of understanding its use in knives. In order to create a baseline of understanding, I'm going to start by leveraging one of the best resources in the knife steel category, Dr. Larrin Thomas, and of course his knife steel rating system, which rates steels based on toughness, wear resistance, and corrosion resistance. Please note that ease of sharpening is not something that he specifically rates steels on, since this is usually the opposite of wear resistance. If you have a burning desire to know how easy steels on this list are to sharpen, it's going to be based on how much wear resistance any given steel has. The higher the wear resistance, the more difficult the steel is to sharpen, and often at the cost of toughness as well. Speaking of toughness, which is defined as a steel's ability to resist breaking, chipping, and fracturing, this is the measure of a steel's overall strength and durability. Elmax has an adequate toughness rating of 4. Comparatively, other steels with the same rating for toughness include S30V and S45VN, and while this isn't considered exceptional, it is more than adequate for most folding knives and even some fixed blade scenarios. Next is the rating for wear resistance. Dr. Larrin Thomas has labeled this as edge retention to make it easier for people to understand. However, most specifically, this is the definition of the steel being able to resist abrasion, and the argument can be made that edge retention is something that's achieved through all three categories. In this instance, Elmax is rated at a 5.5 and keeps some excellent company with other steels that are rated at the same level for wear resistance, such as S45VN, CTS XHP, and VanX. Last but definitely not least is corrosion resistance, which remains pretty much self-explanatory. Corrosion resistance refers to how well the steel can withstand rust. Elmax being considered a super stainless steel, we should be looking for a fairly high rating in this category, and it definitely doesn't disappoint with a rating of 8. The same as M398, N690, and again, S45VN. These ratings from Dr. Larrin Thomas give us a great baseline of understanding on Elmax, but unfortunately they do not tell the whole story on the steel, since other factors play a large role in how a steel performs in real-world scenarios, such as blade and edge geometry. For this extra insight, we need to turn to another resource that many of you may already be familiar with. I'm of course referring to the excellent data collected by the channel Cedric and Ada, and I will link to their channel in the description down below if you're interested. Cedric and Ada have been one of the most consistent and influential channels when it comes to logging cut test data over a range of steels and knife models. And if you'd like to check out the data they've collected for yourself, I do highly suggest watching their content and exploring their Google Doc they share in their description of their videos, which catalogs the evidence that I'm going to discuss next. In real-world cutting scenarios, there are two facts that we need to establish up front. The first is that higher toughness allows for more stability and durability at lower edge angles, which plays a large role in edge retention while cutting. Secondly, how a knife is sharpened plays a huge role as well. For example, polished edges versus toothy edges. While toothy edges have micro serrations that allow for better bite, they are not in fact better for overall edge retention of the edge or for corrosion resistance. For example, according to cut tests done on Cecil rope by Cedric and Ada using two different Spyderco paramilitary 2s, one with S110V sharpened to 20 degrees and the other with crew wear sharpened to 17 degrees, they found that while S110 has much higher wear resistant properties than crew wear, with being rated at an 8 while crew wear is only rated at a 5, the paramilitary 2 and crew wear that had a lower edge angle of 17 degrees vastly outperformed the S110V by achieving 550 cuts. The PM2 and S110V, despite having the much better wear resistant properties, was only sharpened to 20 degrees and only achieved 295 cuts. In fact, the S110V had to have its edge lowered all the way to 13 degrees to outperform its crew wear counterpart, and even then only marginally, given its lack of toughness and stability at that much lower edge angle. In regards to Elmax directly, Cedric and Ada actually tested 4 different knives in this steel, including the Microtech DOC, the ZT0562, and the Spyderco Mule Team 13. Of course, they also did test the DBK Bushcrafter. Out of all of these, the Mule Team 13 performed the best with 475 cuts on a polished 17-degree edge, while the worst performing Elmax tested was the ZT0562, which by contrast only performed 236 cuts on a 20-degree edge. But how does it compare against other stainless super steels in these real-world cut tests? Now that we've established that better toughness allows for more edge stability at lower edge angles, which in turn leads to better edge retention, let's compare against what is probably Elmax's biggest rival, M390. M390 is often touted as marginally better than Elmax because M390 is slightly more rust resistant and has slightly more wear resistance. The only way to see the difference definitively would be to compare the same model of knife at the same edge angle. This is because of the difference in Rockwell hardness targets seen between different manufacturers, and sometimes even the same manufacturer just using different steels. Lucky for us, we can make this comparison by comparing the Spyderco Mule Team knives in Elmax and M390 respectively. This may come out as a bit of a shocker, but while Elmax Mule performed 475 cuts at 17 degrees, the M390 Mule Team performed more than just marginally better with 680 cuts at the same 17-degree angle with a large margin of victory by about 205 cuts. So if Elmax is only supposed to have slightly less wear resistance than M390, why did it get thrashed in the cut test by the M390 version of the exact same knife by such a large margin? It actually has a lot to do with Bowler's recommended Rockwell target for edge retention. According to Bowler, the recommended Rockwell hardness is between 58 and 60 for Elmax, despite the fact that Elmax can be hardened upwards of 60 to 62 Rockwell. When we look at the recorded Rockwell for the Mule Team that was tested in this comparison, Spyderco had hardened this Elmax blade to 58.8, while the M390 Mule Team was hardened to 60. We do have to wonder why Bowler recommends 58 to 60 Rockwell for the best edge retention for Elmax. Is it to retain higher toughness while sacrificing less wear resistance? Or maybe it's because the public service announcement from Bowler on the recommended Rockwell came out 6 years ago in 2018, right around the time when Rockwell targets were at a much lower level for knife steels across the board. We're unsure, but let me know what you think the reason is in the comment section down below. Regardless of how Elmax performed in the prior direct comparison, it goes without saying that it is without a shadow of a doubt a stainless super steel in comparison to its more mundane counterparts. So that means that it should be found only on expensive knives, right? Not so fast. Elmax Super Clean can actually be found on many folding knives and even fixed blades under the $150 mark, and in many other cases even under $100, meaning that despite its super steel status, Elmax is actually competing in the market with steels that are considered good, but definitely not in the same league as far as performance is concerned. Think S30V and S35VN. In conclusion, Elmax Super Clean is very much a desirable steel. While it might not have god tier levels of edge retention, it is very stainless, it's easier to sharpen than M390, and it's also a bit tougher as well. Adding to the fact that it can be had frequently on knives in the sub $150 range, it proposes an amazing value to be had. In the course of researching Elmax for this episode, I had several breakthroughs in understanding. The first being just how important toughness is as a knife steel property. Being able to increase the edge retention through lowering the angle of the knife's edge was something I was aware of, but the importance of the steel having enough toughness to be able to support that edge at that lower angle was not something that I was able to quantify previously. I hope that the information in this episode was not only easy to understand, but also enlightening as well. And if you want to learn about more super steels and their amazing properties, go ahead and check out one of the videos that pops up next.